In one of my earliest videos on this channel, I outlined why I like the Triton dust bucket. Workshops evolve over time, and whilst it suited my needs at the time, some of my newer equipment, such as the Triton thickness planer, require larger bore hoses for takeoff. The dust compartment can cope with the weight, but there's a bottleneck in the lid of the dust bucket. At the end of last year, I bought a new hose and 4 attachments. Primarily, it was for the frictionless coating on the pipe that drew my attention to work with my track saw. In reflection, I'm quite disappointed with the way this has frayed over time. I did pick up some green tape to fix the issue, and I thought at the time of purchase it was Festool green. Wrong, oh well. The pipe fits the vacuum cleaner perfectly, but is way too large for the dust bucket lid. Consequently, over the last few weeks I have not used it, and now the vacuum is choked with dust. Without wasting the base of the bucket, which is very robust, I wanted to upgrade my extraction system and leave some room for further workshop growth. And the policy of the Small Loft Workshop, anything that is bulky must be able to be wheeled about. I bought this ONCCI Dust Cyclone from Amazon for £28. It was slightly more expensive than some, as it came with hose connections, adapters, a gasket, clips and fixings. In order to keep the Triton dust bucket base, I needed to come up with a new lid, and for this project I decided to use up the remainder of the MFC chipboard I salvaged from old desks last year. I figured the MFC would be a good impermeable product, so I would have less air leakage. From this I cut a piece just larger than the overall diameter of the bucket. Then used my Makita palm router and homemade jig to set up to create the round top. I used a 6mm upcut router bit. I really like the dust extract from this little router connected to the Rockler small port hose. You can feel the suction of the router being sucked to the piece, and it hardly seems to create any dust at all. The top is created with a 6mm deep by 10mm wide groove to accept the bucket rim. And then finally just cut into an oversized circle. There, that fits nice and snug. Now it's time to fit the Cyclone head. The hole was drilled with a 54mm cutter, and then I use a gasket as a guide to drill the mounting holes. Now the bolts and fixings that came with the kit weren't long enough for the MFC top, so I had to delve into my stores to see if I could find something that was longer. Then the Cyclone unit was bolted to the top with the gasket in between. I had to use a screwdriver and a spanner trick to stop the fixings spinning as they were tightened. Now it's time to turn my attention to the cart. This is made from the same melamine face chipboard. Initially I placed the dust bucket and the vacuum cleaner onto this board just to visualise how I would like it. At this stage I am not cutting it to length. An upstand panel will form the front, and this will just be screwed in place. Next I want to add some diagonal bracing. This provides the front panel with some rigidity. The front and base connection are made by pocket hole screws, and the braces are added in a way to restrain the dust bucket. A 1" by 2" spacer is added to the front. This further stiffens the construction. I cut another piece of 1 by 2 around the curve of the bucket with the bandsaw. Now I have a fixed position for the bucket, I can start to put the piping together. And once I'm happy with the positioning, I can add the top part of the front panel. This will work a little bit like a guillotine. And into this panel I need to set the 50mm pipe that will form the inlet. To create the hole, I use a 50mm Forstner bit. Most of the plumbing I'm using here I've had for a while and bought it really cheap when a local DIY centre closed down a few years ago. The hole was slightly undersized, so I just made it slightly larger with the bobbin sander. There, a perfect snug fit. I connected the 50mm pipe to the Cyclone with a standard plumbing 50mm male-female connector. And now I know the pipe's in the correct place, I can just trim the top panel and round off the square edges. For the next step, I needed 6 pieces of 1 by 2 6-inch long. These were fitted 2 front, 2 back of the front panel, and then 2 at the sides to restrain the top part of the panel. The side pieces were glued and then just screwed at the bottom end. And to finalise the front panel I needed another 3 pieces of melamine face chipboard. One cut 80mm wide and the other 2 about 25mm. The sharp corners were removed and the 2 smaller pieces each had 3 drill holes for screwing to the front face. Now the larger piece needed 2 holes in. One was a 32mm hole and the other one was a 54mm hole. I drilled these with the nearest drill bit I had to hand and then had to open the holes up on the spindle sander. I can now put the front face together. The top section was slid in and the piece with the 2 holes on was just clamped on. This just ensured it stayed in place while I screwed on the 2 other pieces. The 50mm pipe was fixed in place with my hot glue gun. In theory, this was good, until I went and smudged the glue all over the front face. What was I thinking? So once it had properly set, I had to scrape it off with a chisel. Now it's time to connect the vacuum cleaner. I used the original pipe that came with the vacuum cleaner and removed the original end as it was no good. These are the 2 fitting options that came with the Cyclone along with this black adapter. I wonder why they never really make the connectors to fit properly. The larger of the 2 made quite a nice fit. Okay, playtime over, back to work. With the front end of the cart complete, I needed to work out the placement of the vacuum cleaner and which way round to rotate it. And once I'd figured this out, I fixed a further 2 pieces of timber to the base of the cart to locate the vacuum cleaner. I could now cut the base to its final length and fix the 2 pieces in place. Now the first tip I give to anybody who has a small workshop is put everything on wheels, and this cart is no exception. These are just 4 cheap casters from Screwfix. Now it's together, it's time to turn on the vacuum cleaner and see what the suction's like. It's not bad, but I think I can improve it. So I tape the joints up with some aluminium duct tape and I add a further piece of 50mm plumbing onto the connection at the top of the cyclone. I boiled the two pieces in a pan to make them a little bit more flexible and then friction fitted them together. I then formed the connection on top of the cyclone with my glue gun. Wow, now it really sucks. This is pretty much done. I can now wheel it into the eaves of the loft to give me some more space in the middle of the floor. And as for the two holes in the front, the bigger one takes my new hose. The smaller one takes my existing hose with the DeWalt coupling on the end. And with a couple of twists of black tape, the end of my Rockler small part hose kit also fits the bigger hole. And I have a spare place on the strip for future expansion. Thank you for watching.